Is this just a rehash of the Da Vinci Code? I just finished Dan Brown's latest, The Secret of Secrets, and I'm here to give my review and thoughts. Hello, my name is Zach. This channel is mostly science fiction and fantasy reviews, but yes, I do delve into a little bit of everything from comics to manga to personal development and yes, just general fiction. And today I am reviewing the just released latest book in the Robert Langdon series, which is The Secret of Secrets. So a bit of a backstory and why'd this even come up, that yes, I did read the Da Vinci Code way back when. I think it was actually one of my very first audiobooks I ever listened to. I listened to it, in like early 2000s when everyone was reading it before the movie came out. And here's the personal note. At the time, I was working third shift at a hotel, and at night we would deliver the bills under the door, like physically slide the paper bill. This was, early 2000s, under the door, and that was one of our nighttime duties. So the hotel was 2,000 rooms, so it was walking up and down so many floors of this hotel and just dropping these folios off under the doors. So it was a lot of time by yourself, just walking the halls. And what did I do to keep myself busy? Yes, I had my trusty iPod because that was way before iPhones. My manual iPod. I loaded up the Da Vinci Code and listened to it while at work, while delivering folios on the third shift, while working for Marriott. So great experience and great memories of thinking about this because I saw the new Dan Brown was coming out, and I just put the hold on through the library, and for some reason, yes, my library got additional copies because I thought I was 4, 5, 6 in line. I put it in fairly early, but it's a popular book. It's Dan Brown, and I got it on a release day. So I got this on September 9th, and I finished it within a week because yes, if you read Dan Brown's other works like Da Vinci Code or anything else in the Robert Langdon series, you know what you're getting into, and this is more of the same. And for me, not having read anything in between, it still hit, it still made sense. You don't need to know the backstory. So the positives is, yes, this is not like epic fantasy, which is what I'm usually reading, where, if you skip the middle books of any series, you're going to be totally lost. Each Dan Brown novel, I don't know if they're all like this, but it's pretty self-contained. So here in The Secret of Secrets, we find our intrepid hero, Robert Langdon, the symbologist from Harvard, and he's somehow wrapped up in another crazy conspiracy theory, mystery, secret societies. And today it's The Secret of Secrets in this latest Robert Langdon novel. So it's very familiar. It felt a lot of the same beats as the Da Vinci Code. And again, I can't speak to the other 4 or 5 books in between the Da Vinci Code and when this came out. So I feel like, yes, I didn't miss much. He's still a professor at Harvard, our hero, Robert Langdon. Apparently the second character was in a previous novel, but again, didn't need to really know that because she's introduced as kind of a love interest at this point, but apparently they were partners in a previous novel. So that's not really a spoiler, I guess, because yes, it has no bearing on the story, but she's upgraded from assistant or just side character on, yes, Robert Langdon always has a female side character that's somehow involved in whatever wacky situation he's in. But so they're together in Prague. So as typical for Da Vinci Code or a Dan Brown novel, it is also part travelogue. And as someone who recently, within the past couple of years, visited Prague myself, I love that aspect. I thought it was really great hearing about all these famous locations in Prague that I had been to, so they all made sense. I had this vivid picture in my mind of Prague as Robert Langdon is traversing through the city, through all the famous sites, and Dan Brown, the writer, is giving us these descriptions. We know where he's going. He's very descriptive, not overly descriptive, but enough to draw you in. He's dropping these names of the places that Robert Langdon is traveling to, so we know where he's going. He's hitting all the famous sites, just like the Da Vinci Code, where he's traversing all over Europe to these famous cities. So I love the writing and I love the imagery. And to talk about the actual novel, the plot, yes, it is a thriller, and much, as I mentioned, in the vein of Da Vinci Code, where There's a conspiracy, something happens. Try not to be, again, spoilerific at all, because that's the whole point and the whole fun of these novels is figuring out the puzzle, how it all fits together, just like the Da Vinci Code, where, not really a spoiler, it came out like 20 years ago, but what the secret is in the Da Vinci Code, who's who, what is the Holy Grail. There's no Holy Grail this one, but there is a secret of secrets. It's all interconnected. And having finished it, I thought it was pretty well done, that everything does wrap up in the end, just like Da Vinci Code, just like, I guess, every Robert Langdon novel. And I felt, yes, that Dan Brown is definitely a master at this kind of story, that I was along for the ride. Every chapter ended on a cliffhanger, which is different from a traditional, maybe epic fantasy or science fiction novel that I usually read, because every chapter we just about to learn something, and then the next chapter, and it shifts POV to another one of the side plots, and then the chapter after that we finally pick up where we left off with Robert Langdon about to say some secret to learn some key event, or some at edge of your seat action is about to resolve, and it's always that cliffhanger ending that really just makes you want to keep reading. That's why I finished this in a week. I had a great time. I thought the pacing was great. Maybe, again, if you're an experienced thriller reader or experienced Dan Brown novelist, that yes, these beats are going to be maybe familiar. They were familiar enough for me, having just read Da Vinci Code, that I felt like a lot of the similar elements were happening. So if you remember Da Vinci Code, you had the Silas, the monk who worked for Opus Dei, like the conservative group that was self-flagellating himself, and he was like the killer in the shadows. And wouldn't you know it, there is a kind of secret killer also happening with the B plot in this novel. So it felt very, again, sort of deja vu, that isn't this the plot? Am I reading Da Vinci Code again? There's like Robert Langdon and his female heroine that are facing the organization together, and then you also have the B plot where this mysterious figure is committing atrocities for some unknown reason that we're of course going to find out at the end. So it felt very similar in a good way. It was nostalgic. This is what I needed, what I wanted. It was a great break from other series I'm currently reading to read something that was just well crafted. It's Dan Brown, an experienced writer, writing what he knows, going back to the formulas, the beats, the pacing, everything that's great, that makes you love Dan Brown. I loved how the puzzles worked, how Robert Langdon, being this Harvard professor, has to use his intellect to connect the symbols and connect things together to get out of the jam he's in. It's not like a Deus Ex Machina where the magic powers are what save him. No, it's always Langdon's intellect. He has to figure it out, piece it together, outsmart the other guy. And the writing just makes you think, oh man, Robert Langdon's so cool. How do you figure that out? And you as the reader are given just enough to, again, appreciate that he'll, being the professor, he'll explain the symbology behind something or why this worked a certain way. And it just works in the kind of that pop culture sense. This is definitely like this mass market book where Langdon / Dan Brown explains just enough you need to know to make that connection and make you as the reader feel like, oh yeah, I get it. I understand what Langdon's talking about as he explains whatever concept or symbols is making the connection, that we as the reader are now making the connection and using that to figure out the puzzle or how Langdon's going to escape and how he explains how he just escaped. So it all made very much sense, and it was, yeah, just honestly just great writing. And what this reminds me of, and maybe the controversial take, is having just read R.F. Kuang's Katabasis, I felt this was a better Katabasis. So there were definitely similarities between Secret of Secrets / maybe any Robert Langdon novel by Dan Brown and R.F. Kuang's characters in Katabasis. Robert Langdon is a Harvard professor. Characters in Katabasis are PhD students that go to Oxford and Cambridge. So they're intellectuals versus intellectuals, adults versus kids. But it's that intellectual world, and the writing in Katabasis, I dare say, is very familiar to a Dan Brown novel where they're using their intellect and they're overly explaining things. But Katabasis sort of delves more into the character work as opposed to being witty or being smart for smart's sake as they advance the plot. That yes, they use that the writers both are kind of using that intellect and explaining to the reader why you should know this, why you should care about this, using the characters of academics as the vehicle to tell you, the reader, what's going on, and to make you feel, yeah, I understood what's going on, and they explain just enough of the concepts to make you, as the reader, feel good. But again, slightly different, of course, novels that Katabasis is leaning a little more on the fantasy side. They're delving into hell to rescue their professor. And this one is a more grounded fiction story where it's a thriller that takes place in the real world in Prague. There's no magical elements, but we are, of course, suspending our disbelief a little bit in the same way Da Vinci Code was about secret societies, and the certain kind of out there concepts in the novel are working as they again should. I'm not trying to dump into spoilers because it made sense. It was interesting because the concept of Secret of Secrets is about human consciousness, and that's about the only thing I'll say, because anything else would delve into some of the later cool plot points. But the main book is about human consciousness, and there's a secret about consciousness, and that's explored throughout the novel, again, in this cool way where it explores it one way and then it sort of drives you another way based on some research and some academics and another understanding as our characters learn more about what's really going on in Prague and what's happening in this whole conspiracy that they seem to have fallen into as usual, and why everything is happening, why it's happening. So it was great. It was fun. I really enjoyed it. And lastly, to talk a bit about what I read in the New York Times review. So New York Times had a review of this as it came out. So I read that just to kind of get my footing before I delved into the novel myself, because yes, I was also reading it on release day. And I forget the writer's name, but I do agree with the writer that this is also a kind of a love letter to the publishing industry. And reading it, I understand why that was written. Mostly because the editor for Robert Langdon, and I assume Dan Brown's actual editor, is a character in the novel. So Penguin Random House is a main character. The editor plays a fun role, and it's just a love letter to books and how we can get lost in books and the publishing industry, and it celebrates everything good about the publishing industry. So was like, yes, publishing is cool again, and I really enjoyed it. As a reader, I think readers will appreciate that. Maybe it's a little cheesy to write your editor in as a character and to go on some wacky chases, but again, being someone from New York, I enjoyed those scenes where we go to New York, we're in Random House Tower, or even in Jersey at times. It was interesting. Again, I love the travelogue, the style which Dan Brown writes these locations. It maybe just because I was familiar with both Prague and New York, I could feel myself in these spots, running through the streets of both cities as the characters did that. So I really liked the writing, very vivid in my mind as someone who's experienced both those cities. I loved it. It was a page turner, as I mentioned. Definitely one of the positives was how everything was a cliffhanger. Just wanted to keep reading and figuring out more and more of the mystery, what's going to happen next. I didn't really felt it dragged, and maybe this is just a testament to reading something different at times and how that is really good for you as a reader in general. That sometimes, yes, I'll get stuck in a sci-fi or a fantasy series and just want to read, but it is nice to kind of take a break and expand your horizons a bit, to read something like a thriller, a mass market book. This is like the summer blockbuster of thrillers, not too psychological, but you do feel good after reading it. Maybe a little more highbrow than a Marvel movie, but it's not like an art house cinema feature where you're really puzzling out what the meaning of everything was and the symbolism. No, it's kind of given to you, but you do feel smarter after reading it, and you feel like, yes, you sort of learned something, but you also had a really good time following Langdon and company through this misadventures in Europe. And yeah, I just enjoyed it a lot. I would give it easy 5 stars. It just was, maybe I'm not the technical 5 stars, but it was just a good, satisfying read. My enjoyment factor was sky high in this one because it was exactly what I needed as a break from what I'm currently reading, and it was just a good time. I really enjoyed reading Dan Brown's latest, The Secret of Secrets, and if that's something you're interested in, something maybe outside of your wheelhouse of general science fiction and fantasy, and you want just a fun, lighthearted, summer blockbuster kind of film, do check out some of the Dan Brown's Secret of Secrets. I think it's definitely worth your time. So thanks for watching this video and this review, and have a great day.